What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lucas Live. My name is Lucas Tyndale. I am your host. I am excited to be here with this phenomenal, wonderful woman here today. Her name is Serena Draper Hendershot. That is not Serena Draper Hendershot. That's Serena Draper last name, Hendershot last name, two last names, one first name, one middle name. I don't know, but Serena is here. She is a wife, a mother, a community advocate, just someone who so many people know, so many people love. If you're watching this, you're like, that's my girl. I know her. I love her. Make sure you watch and listen to the whole episode. If she's somebody who you're like, I kind of know who she is, but I don't know much about her, you're going to learn everything you need to know about her today. We're going to get into all her business about everything. No, we're going to get to know her today, get to know what she's passionate about and who she is. I am really excited to have her here in studio. Serena, welcome.
Thank you, Lucas. I'm excited to be on here and excited to just support you and what you're doing in the community.
I appreciate that. See, I appreciate people supporting me back. You know what I mean? Because I be out here trying to support the community, doing my little piece of the pie. And I'm glad to have people come through and do their thing. So, Serena, first of all, today is a big day because you have something that you've been planning. And for people watching, you may be listening to this years from now or maybe watching this months from now. But today is a big day because you have an event in celebration of your birthday. Your birthday's coming up. Talk to us a little bit about what's coming up today.
Yeah, so I have this women in community event coming up today.
Right.
It's from 2 to 4. We're
I wasn't
here
invited, but that's cool.
And he wasn't invited because it's for women, obviously.
Okay.
And so,
Okay. My wife will be there. She'll be there.
and
Representing.
so one of the biggest things as to why I'm having this event is because one, I'm a connector at heart. I love people. I love relationships. And what better way to celebrate my birthday and bringing people together?
I love that.
And people as in women. And so this event is really going to encapsulate a brand that I have started the last couple of years called Holistically Her. So I'm excited for it. It's about women walking in healing, women walking in empowerment, and women walking in restoration.
I love that. Holistically Her, is that what it's
Yes.
called? Okay. So talk to us about that. So you started to break it down. Help us understand what made you want to go about starting something like this, because a lot of people care. A lot of women say, I care about other women. A lot of women say, I care about sisterhood. That doesn't mean they're starting something. Why did you start an actual organization around it?
Really, just being a woman of faith in my journey, I watched how my relationship with my mother actually affected a lot of the relationships with other women that I was having. And just knowing that my past, I have a lot of like childhood trauma, a lot of things that have happened in my past that one, the H stands for healing. And so healing means healing the younger girl inside of you.
I love that.
And then empowerment means empowering or bringing up other women alongside of you so that you're not the only woman in the room.
Yeah.
And then restoration is about restoring relationships that you didn't value because you didn't value yourself. And for me, that really resonated with me because I watched how a lot of my friendships, I ended up being the common denominator as to why a lot of things were like broken, a lot of my past. And so in every experience that you have, you're always the only common denominator. So, yeah.
You stepping on some people's toes here. Now, you can't say that. Most people say it's everybody else's fault. I mean, I would still be friends with them, but I would still be in that relationship, but I would still be at that job, but I would still be, but everything after the but is everybody else's fault. Talk to me a little bit about your perspective on taking ownership of your part in maybe the breakdown of friendships, relationships, and other interactions.
Yeah, taking ownership, it honestly started when I was in college. So, in college was my first time I ever ended up going to counseling/therapy. And I was like talking about, I was doing the blaming, I was pointing the finger, I was talking about my mom, I was talking about how my dad wasn't there, I was talking about my siblings, talking about those friends, right? And my counselor just looked at me and she said, well, Serena, when you think about all of those situations, you're the common denominator. And when have you taken a look at the role that you played in those things? And ever since then, it has taken me on this journey of being very self reflective. And so, Holistically Her is all about women being self reflective about like the things that they do and how they are able to show up as their full and whole self.
So what do you think some women are doing? Let's talk about this because I think this can help some people.
Yeah.
And this may be people in general. I mean, guys, we usually don't have any problems. But okay, maybe we do. Okay, I'm lying. She looked at me like, is he serious? Okay, we got all kinds of
Because
problems.
you lying.
I know, I'm lying. Guys, we be having all kinds of double. I do a lot of teaching on emotional intelligence, right?
I know.
And I talked to a lot of people about the fact I did a keynote in Cincinnati. It was a room predominantly men, predominantly older white men who were facing a change in their organization that they didn't want.
Mm-hmm.
They was looking like, I don't want to change.
Right.
And I'm standing there talking about, you got to be emotionally intelligent and deal with the change. And they was looking at me like, like, I guess,
Right.
and I think I won them over probably, somewhere in there. But I think a lot of times my take on men is, you can give me your take on women, is men are often raised in our culture, in American culture, and then Black culture has some other nuances to it, to I think we're raised to not be emotionally available, to not be emotionally
Sure.
intelligent.
Yeah.
We are being emotionally stunted in our growth because we're always taught, when we're really little, we're told you're barely crawling, you're barely walking. And if you fall over as a toddler when you're a boy, they say, be a big boy,
Mm-hmm.
get
Mm-hmm.
up, wipe your tears. They might say it tough, like, be a big boy, get up, stop crying. Or they might say it kindly.
Yeah.
But the message is still the same.
Exactly.
Grow up, get up, and stop crying. Squash those emotions. Get over that emotional state. You're a boy.
Mm-hmm.
Boys don't cry.
For sure.
And I say this: a boy and a girl could be in the same scenario. The boy falls off the bike. They say, get up, get back on the horse, get back on the bike, stop crying. The girl falls off the horse. Sometimes that's said, but more often, especially as a father, I know, even to my daughters, it was like, princess, come here, pick them up, kiss the boo-boo, take him in, carry him in the house. And meanwhile, I'm like, son, if you don't get up and pick up both bikes and get over it, right?
For sure.
So we're stunting the emotional growth of men in our society. Then okay, first is be a big boy. Then by the time you 8, 9 years old, it's be a man. Man up, be a man, be a man. Come on, be a man. You're supposed to be a man. You gonna be a man? You want to be a man? You got to be a man. So be tough. Pushing us past everything again. And then, by the time we're growing, I don't know what we think we are, but we're often not prepared for the emotionality of life.
Yeah.
So when I talk to men about, or people in general, about emotional intelligence, first I got to dig through some of the ills of our upbringing to help men realize it's not necessarily your fault that you aren't emotionally available for your relationship, or you're not emotionally intelligent at work, and your rage is coming out in whatever way it is. It may not be tears, but you may be a horrible boss because you are not emotionally intelligent. But while it may not be your fault, it is now your responsibility as an adult to take accountability for the fact that this is where you are now.
For sure.
And there are tools and information to help you. When you think about women, in how they deal with their own stuff, from an emotional standpoint, what are some of the thoughts you have, or what is some of the advice you give women?
Well, I think with everything that you said, especially when you talked about like your daughter and you said like, come here, princess. I think one thing that I've noticed is that women allow their emotions to like control them. And we have not been in control of our own emotions. And so like we walk in the room and we can change that atmosphere, and that can either be for the good or it can be for the bad. Yes. Right. And so I realized that very early on. My cousin Corey, when she watches this, because I know that she probably will, she knows that when I grew up, I used to have these attitudes that my household used to say. And
these attitudes.
Okay. And what it would be
not the attitudes, not the beautiful attitudes. They were attitudes. They were
like
not
just
so
like straight attitude. And like being in the household, like I would be in a room with people and I would not speak. They would literally be speaking to me and I would not speak to them. And I watched how like I really was like affecting the rooms that I was in. And I don't think women like realize how much that is like controlling how people perceive us. But also like how we're just like how we are just navigating our own self, right? And I don't say that in this like negative against like the feminist movement, because I mean, we already know the patriarchy and when people talk about, oh, like women are just so aggressive and all this stuff, like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just being in control of those emotions and watching how those emotions can and have stirred the narrative of like how we are walking in our lives. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
That's fascinating. Yeah. And I agree. And so you made a post the other day, which I was fascinated by. I'm fascinated by you in general. You're somebody interesting. If you guys aren't following her, she's somebody interesting to follow. Great insight, great post, great stuff. I really enjoy it. And one of the things you're very transparent. We'll talk about that because you've talked to me about.
Ooh.
All right. Well, so let me show that next part.
No, I love it. I love it. We
Let's talk
can go
about
there.
transparency versus vulnerability. You mentioned this to me a few weeks ago. You and I talked. Talk to me about that. What are your thoughts on
Yes.
transparency versus vulnerability, and where are you at with it?
Yeah. So when I think of transparency, I think it's like telling the full circle that no one actually asked about you telling them.
Okay.
So like honesty is obviously telling the truth, right?
Yes.
But then transparency is giving part of the story that they didn't even ask about,
Okay.
right? So you're
Okay.
being very transparent. But vulnerability is actually like the emotional part of that story. And the thing that I told Lucas the other day is that as I've just been on this journey, so most people don't know this. Some people do, but I actually stepped away from my career about a year ago now, and decided to be a stay-at-home mom. And in this journey, as much as it was like being present for my kids,
Yeah.
really what God is doing has been working on me and
Okay.
working on my heart, making sure that I'm like healing from the brokenness that happened in my childhood family, but then also so that I can be restored for my family. And the thing that I realized in this journey is that I can be the most transparent person ever. Like right now, I'm telling you guys a lot
Right.
of
You
things
are.
that
We all in
you're
your
not even
business.
asking,
Right.
right?
Right.
But I realized that I will intellectually explain something and give the facts of a situation, but I never talk about how it made me feel.
Wow.
And that was my way of actually masking those emotions and just being like very like it was a defense mechanism for
Yeah.
me. And I didn't even realize I started to believe the lie that I was okay about certain situations just because I was able to talk about the situation, but I wasn't really talking about how it made me feel.
Interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, transparency versus vulnerability. Fascinating concept. When you said it to me, it was like reading a book for the first time. It was like I had never thought about that because I think I'm a bit of both. I'm definitely a transparent person. Sometimes I overshare. I do corporate training and I talk about my family, my children. That's what I'm
Right.
talking about because that's what I know. That's what I care about. And while I'm teaching you a concept, it's like I always want people to feel it as a person, not as a worker.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you're not a cog in a machine. So I talk about those things. And so therefore I then talk about my daughter cleaning her room. And when you're developing a culture in a business, I'm like, you tell people the mission or the vision of the company is to have a clean room. That's a value of our family.
Right.
But cleaning the room, there's behaviors that are involved in cleaning a room that have to do
Exactly.
with sweeping the floor and taking out the trash and cleaning under your bed and doing your laundry. So I talk to them about that very transparently. Vulnerability, I think I do a pretty good job because, like, especially when it comes to my mom, everybody knows I started Lucas Live after my mom passed away in 2020. It was what it was all about. I've cried on air, like on the show. But I was given space. When I talk about men
Mm,
being emotionally unavailable, it's because I know the difference. Because I was I was the youngest child, so my siblings were kind of like, man up, stop
for
being a
sure.
baby, stop being the baby, stop
Hmm.
being a baby. So I had to like get tough from them. But my mother was so emotionally open to us, and even me as a little boy, she would pick me up if I fell off my bike. She
Yeah.
would hold me and let me talk about my feelings, which then led me to a place where I feel more comfortable in a room of women than men because I like the conversation that's deeper
Yeah.
than what do you do for a living, what kind of money you make, what kind of car you drive. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't care about any of that stuff.
Hmm.
So I think that's a fascinating concept. The difference between vulnerability and transparency. I think often we think we're doing both because we're doing one or the
Yep.
other, but
Yep.
we may not be.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of Black women are actually conditioned to do that
Yeah.
because we just have not had the luxury to actually be able to process all the things that we've gone through
Yeah.
just in our journeys. So I think that's the biggest reason why a lot of times it's easier to intellectualize an experience rather than
Mhm.
it is to emotionally explain an experience.
I love it. So talk to us a little bit. Okay, so you mentioned to me that you're going through a season of obedience and sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's a season. This is your
Oh,
season of
yeah.
obedience and sacrifice. Um, talk to us a little bit about that because somebody else out there, I'm sure, is feeling the same thing or they didn't have the words to put to it. So
Hmm.
as you've reflected, what is this like for you? What do you mean?
So what I mean by that, so I'll give a little snapshot of like why I even had to go on this journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So last year, I actually had got into Johns Hopkins University
Uh-huh.
to get my master's in public health.
Uh-huh.
I got into the program and then I was actually applying to be in their fellowship, the Bloomsburg Fellowship, to pay for it all.
Uh-huh.
And that March, I ended up getting the news that I didn't get the fellowship.
Mm.
And that like wrecked my world. And because I'm like, one, I wasn't searching for this.
Right.
Like, Lord, I felt like you like put this on my lap.
Woo.
And I'm like, man, I'm in this career now at the public health department. I'm doing phenomenal in my role. Like it just made sense. Like,
Right.
why wouldn't I get this
Right.
thing? And I just remember watching a pastor, he gave a sermon and he said, we get so caught up in wanting to go to the promised land that we forget about the promise giver. And what if you get to the promised land and he's not even there?
Woo.
And it
That's
wrecked my whole
wild.
heart because I'm like, I could have went to Johns Hopkins,
Mm.
but I could have not had God with me.
Wow.
Like I could have went
You could have been there.
and he would have not have been there because that was
Wow.
not his will for me.
Wow.
And so in that, some situations were happening in my work at the same time. And so as like I was having personal stuff like with my husband and my kids, I have a 9-year-old, a 5-year-old, and now a 3-year-old. And at the time he had just turned 2. And
Uh-huh.
so I'm just like, and all the women who are watching, y'all know childcare is way too expensive. And so
Absolutely.
so I was just faced with this like, okay, I really want to put my family first, but I also want to make sure that like my kids are getting discipled well.
Mhm.
And so really I was just kind of faced with this opportunity of like, is it really about like the career or is it really about like the legacy that I'm going to leave with my family and my marriage? And so um, yeah, that June, I ended up making the decision to walk away from my career,
Wow.
which was a huge deal because I remember when I got the job, I told Health Commissioner Jim Adams, I literally told him, I was like, God called me to this. Like,
Mm.
this was
This
my
is my
role,
job. This is
like
my
it
right.
was nobody else's role,
Right.
and so have to make that decision to walk away was like a huge deal, especially I had just got like 2 awards in that like last
Mm.
year, and I'm like,
Yeah.
man, like I was in the pinnacle of my career as a young
Wow.
professional. And
Yes.
so to make that decision was very hard. Now, fast forward, when you talk about the obedience and the sacrifice,
Yeah.
I'm realizing that yes, the awards are great. And
Mhm.
I literally just told Lucas that I'm going
Uh-huh.
through this like imposter syndrome. And I'm
Yes.
mostly going through it because of now that I'm home, I'm like, well, why am I getting recognized for anything? Right.
Uh-huh. Right.
Like I'm just like, why am I getting recognized? And I've like forgot. But the one thing is like, I think a lot of people will think that the accolade and the person getting recognized is like that end game.
Yeah.
But what like the Lord's been teaching me is like what you were doing in your secret place when
Mm.
you were with me, when you
Yes.
were doing the things that nobody was recognizing you for.
Right.
There's a lot of things that I don't post about. Like I'm on several committees that is my
Uh-huh.
time, and time is money. I don't get
Right.
paid for committees. It's my
Interesting.
time. I show up in all of these spaces. I'm constantly advocating for people who have like a past or just a life that I'm living, like
Yeah.
trying to dig ourselves out of poverty. And so that is what like made me realize like all of that sacrifice and that obedience the last like couple years is
Mhm.
what led me to some of these recognitions, is
Yeah.
what led me to be in the spaces that I'm in and
Right.
allow me to just have this credibility in the community that I now have. And it's taken me a lot to like recognize that it's okay to accept it. It's okay to
Yes.
accept it and it's okay to celebrate because you know you don't want to be boastful, you don't want to come off as this egotistic person, but I do realize that it's been the time that I've just been sacrificing
Mm.
behind closed doors that got me to the spaces that I'm in now.
I love that. And congratulations to you on all of your recent awards
Thank
and
you.
more to come. On May 5th, you're going to be how old?
I am going to be 29 years old.
29 years old. So already at 28, about to be 29, you're already receiving awards in the community. You're already being recognized. You're already doing amazing things, which is just absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you.
Okay. And even though people don't believe you're even 29, They're like, and I didn't lower my chair or anything
He
to try
definitely
to.
did.
I wasn't like, man, like
And
I
he
was
called
like,
me 12 earlier.
I said some people might mistake you for. I didn't. Well, and my wife is probably watching, like, you didn't do that, but she knows me. She's like, I'm sure he did. I'm transparent, right? I just say whatever comes to my mind. So, it's absolutely amazing, and I think for me, you are a person who, and I don't know if you guys have people out here. Are there people out there that you feel like you know, but you don't know them, like from social media and
Oh, yeah.
things, or you see them in circles? I see you at events, and
Mhm.
I'm like. I started to see so many things. I was like, "That's the same girl. Like that is that same girl, right? That is that same girl." In my
I
head, I'm
know
like,
my hair
"Playing."
changes up, but
That was what it was. Okay,
uh,
I didn't want to call out the black girl magic. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, is that her? I think that is her. Her hair was different yesterday, but whatever. All good. It'll be different another time. But yeah. So I think it's. But you were someone. You are someone to know, and I think one of my thoughts is. And you tell me what you think about this. What is the line between humility and boastfulness? Like, what is the line between being a child of a king and being somebody who God has called to be all these things and walking in the power of that versus being so low until you have low self-esteem, so low until you don't think you are deserving of anything,
mhm,
so low until you won't even receive the blessings of God because you're blocking them because you won't receive them because for some reason somebody or the world or something out there has told you how unworthy you are.
mhm.
What are your thoughts on to some woman out there as you're teaching people about being holistically her? What would you say to the woman out there who's struggling with finding that balance between being so sure I'm her to being like, well, no, I'm no one. I'm just a lowly person and I don't want anything. What do you tell them?
I would say because I'm a woman of God, at the end of the day, all the glory goes back to him,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where the humility is in. It's
Yeah.
in the simple fact that there's nothing I can do without him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you right now, like I think about my life and I am literally like I have broken all statistics
That's
possible.
amazing.
My dad was not present in my life.
Mm-hmm.
My mom passed away at the age of 58 right before I had my daughter.
Wow.
And so just being able to know that it was in those darkest of places that I was in my childhood and even now in my adult years,
Mm-hmm.
that it was nothing but God's hand that pulled me out.
Yeah.
That's where the humility comes from. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that in order for me to like empower myself though, is exactly what you said, being
Yeah.
a child of a king. Like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like we are royalty though.
Right.
And so knowing that even in our boasting will always be
Mm-hmm.
in his name, and the fact that it was through him that we were able to even do the things that we do.
Right. I love that. I think it's something that I've battled with in my life
Oh, yeah.
is,
Same.
yeah, it's like
It's
finding
hard.
that. And one thing I found is in my quiet time with God,
Mhm.
is God saying, I don't the example that we look at of God on earth is Jesus, right?
Yeah.
He's like, he came and said he was me, basically.
Mhm.
He came in a way that some might say is boastful. He had humility in the places and spaces where it made sense. And in other places he had to stand up and say, "No, I am him.
Yep.
Like I know who I am." And I think that model can't be lost on us. And I think there's times where we are taught to be I think women were taught to see themselves as lower to keep them in their
Oh, for sure.
place. Black people were taught to see themselves as lower to keep them in their place. So I think there is a story that is spun around an over reliance on humility that stops us. And when we talk about imposter syndrome, man,
Oof.
I don't know who could have it more in our country than minorities. And then a woman is a minority in a minority group. A
Oh,
black
for
woman is a
sure.
minority in a minority group. And it's like, who am I to have this? And I think most of us, it's you have not because you ask not, and you won't ask for something you don't think you
Oh,
deserve.
for sure. For sure.
And you won't even ask God for it, let
Yeah.
alone ask the person who has the opportunity to say,
Mhm.
I think it is my position, it
Oh,
is
yeah.
my place.
Oh, yeah.
So I applaud you for that. Let's talk a little bit about you as a mother. So this is something I started to say earlier. You're a mother, you're a wife, and you are the most unaffectionate person. And I'm just playing. I don't know. No, just kidding. You said that in a post I was reading between. You said that that is a fascinating place for you to be because it's not your natural lean because that's not how you were raised.
Mhm.
Somebody else out there just resonates with them. I know it does. Talk to us a little bit about like your upbringing and kind of how that played out, and then how you've had to adapt and adjust as a wife and a mother.
Yeah. So I always like think of myself as having the what do you want to say, the story like Moses, right? Like he was born a Hebrew, but then he was raised Egyptian.
Yeah.
So for me, I was born with my like Porter family, or well, I was raised with my Porter family, but I was born like my
Their
biological
last name is
mom.
Porter.
They're the
Okay. People are like,
Porters.
what is a Porter family? Is that
Yeah.
like okay,
Yeah,
got
their
you.
last name
Okay.
is Porter.
Got you.
That's my Porter family. But then, like, my biological family is my mom, that Draper name, right?
Okay.
And so, being raised in my Porter family, like, it wasn't an affectionate household. Like, just a simple fact of like just saying "I love you" when you get off the phone, right? Like
That was not a thing.
that you just didn't really say it. And so
I
I
always say
always
it.
and
Like
see,
my
like,
kids though.
man, but what I realized though is like with my mom, we did say it. But the thing
Okay.
is, I was with my Porter family more.
Okay.
And so just like not having that affection, whether it's just like hugs before you go to bed, saying I love you when you get off the phone, I realized how I actually do not like physical touch. And I don't know if it's because I just didn't get it growing up
Yeah.
or if like it's just not something I like, but I do think that has a big play into it. And so now as a mom, my kids are the most affectionate children. They're very clingy. They are physical touch. And it's funny because that's what my husband is.
Okay.
He loves physical touch.
Yep.
And I think about my love language is words of affirmation. And it makes sense though, because if I wasn't really getting a lot of physical touch, I was probably often getting, "Oh, Serena, you're so gifted. Oh, Serena, you're so anointed." And so that's why that ended up being the thing that I love the most. And so it has.
This is a daily challenge.
It is.
This is not something you're like, I've overcome. You said this morning, you said this is real for you
Oh,
on a
it's
daily
so
basis.
it's so real. And I have had to realize that I have to pause and realize like, no, it's me being or realizing that my kids, it's what they need. And so although I don't want it, I have to give that to them because it's what they need. And so it's been super hard. And one thing that my biological sister Emelina, me and her like talk almost every week. She's out in Florida. And she even said she had said that she was confused that I didn't like physical touch. And that actually had to do with she was not raised in the Porter household. She was raised with my mom. And so like her kids are super lovey-dovey. She's super lovey-dovey. Hugs, I love yous, all those things. And I'm like, man, like to realize that change and how that has like it's like that nature versus nurture, you know, and how you're like raised in a certain environment.
Great point.
Yeah, like that has like really changed the nature of how like I go about my everyday. And it is a learned behavior. I'm learning it in my marriage and I'm learning it in motherhood.
Let's talk about it a little more. I think it's a very fascinating concept. And I understand it. My wife was raised in foster care a large part of her life, eventually adopted, but at no points through that was it like, I always say my wife never had a mom or dad. And not that she didn't have a mother figure, she didn't really have a father figure, but she didn't have someone she called mom or said, "Good night, mom," or "Good morning, mom," or any of those things. And I think that is a challenge for a person. That's not normal. That's not the norm. And so she became very driven, very talented. You know, my wife is just a phenomenal person. I mean, and statistically an anomaly considering what she came
For
from.
sure.
But early in our marriage, I mean, it was a struggle for her. And I'm looking like, I'm so affectionate. I told you my mom gave me that female type of emotional space, let's say. So I'm emotional, I'm expressive, I'm loving. I'm like, I'm always like, I always want to touch her, right? And I always want to be close, and I always want to be, but it wasn't her. And it took me a while to, because one, it's not just you that has to adjust, right? I'm sure your husband recognizes this. I had to adjust too to my wife because it was unfair for me to act like she was broken because of how she was raised. It's okay to be a woman who doesn't lean into this overly affectionate persona.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I love that you realize that you are serving your children, your husband in a way, because there is some natural need in this physical realm for a physical bond. There's power in it. We like see it in the scripture, like I think it was like Elijah or something. He like laid on a child or something. Or you always see like Jesus was putting his hands on somebody. He wasn't putting his hands like he was punching them. But there was something
No,
to
I
the
get you.
exchange
Yeah.
of power.
Yeah.
And there's healing in touch and in closeness. And one thing I've learned over the years, I realized like when our children are sick, we hold them. When most people are sick, we separate ourselves from them. When our children are sick, we hold them. But I believe there's an exchange of power and energy that God has given us, an ability to help them heal through our healing, much like Jesus had it at the highest level. So when he touched somebody, when people touched his clothes, they was getting healed. So he was so powerful. But we have that same power in us of healing that can come through touch. So as a woman in society who is probably expected, like women are affectionate, men are not.
Yeah.
You have an affectionate husband, you have affectionate children. There's women out there who are listening. What advice would you give to a woman about how do you find that balance? And then how do you advocate for yourself when you need your space?
Man, finding the balance, like I said, is being in those moments where you have to like pause and like realize, okay, your child just said mommy 7 times. And you probably should just like pause and allow them to get that space, right? But one of the biggest things that I realized with my kids, because they are younger, and this is kind of going in a different route, but I realized in my childhood I wasn't communicated with a lot. Like I would say, don't do that, but never why, right? And so something that I'm learning is like, although I'm like telling them, mommy can't give you a hug right now, like I'm in a space, like is being able to actually explain, like, I have to tell them, like, that's just not something I can give them right now, and not feeling like, oh, you don't want to explain something just because they're younger. And so I'm trying to get better at being able to explain and communicate with my children on a higher level, just so that they can understand that I'm not just like writing them off. So that's one side of it. And I also think like with my husband specifically, I think like on his end, and like you said, you had to adjust, right? Is like also him being self-reflective on like, why is it that you want the affection so much too? Like, is there something in you that like wants it so much? Because there's a reason why I don't want it so much. There was something that happened to me.
Oh,
but
so
there
you got an excuse and we broken. No, tell it like it is. No, just like, no,
and
so it is. No,
like,
that's fair. Okay.
are you being reflective enough to like
Okay.
say like there might be something in you that might want
You're
want
talking to
that
me?
more too? Maybe. I might
Okay,
be.
maybe
I
if
might
it
be.
fits. Okay,
And so yeah, like that's something like I would just say to any woman that's like trying to balance that, but also being totally open with your family to say like, okay, as soon as I get home from work, I need this 10 to 20 minutes to just decompress and because that's the biggest thing. I know so many moms know this feeling when they're walking in the door. The kids are running to them first and then asking for snacks. Your
Stuff
dad was
right
here all
there,
day.
right? Your dad is right
Why
there.
are you
You walk right past your dad. He's here all day.
Man, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, so just being able to communicate with like your spouse, your significant other, that like you need that space and making sure it's consistent, because that's real self-care is being able to give yourself those time blocks and the days in the mundane.
I love that. And I think it's a fascinating thing, and it's almost like God challenges us to stretch. It's the most fascinating thing that opposites attract.
Oh yeah.
I find it fascinating.
It's crazy.
Isn't it? It's because God knows, like, I think he realizes the power of partnership and the purpose of pairing people
Oh yeah.
is like, I need it all. You become one and you don't need two left arms.
Oh, for sure.
He's like, you're not as effective. So I got to give you something that's opposite, which is also going to challenge you to stretch yourself and grow.
Which goes back to obedience and sacrifice.
Okay,
so
here it comes again.
So I'll hit on that a little bit
Yes.
more. So back in 2020, and maybe it was a little bit before that, but I just remember like just in my studying with the Lord and like reading the scriptures, I remember like being told, Serena, you don't know how to die to yourself. And that like wrecked me because, and I mean, you're married, you know that marriage is all about sacrifice, you know?
No, this is death of self. No, you do have to die to some of your stuff.
And so I just remember watching another podcast and the guy literally said, you literally were at the altar when you guys got married. And what is an
What's it
altar?
for? Sacrifice.
Sacrifice. And
Wow.
that wrecked me because I'm like, here I am getting mad because he over here using my toothbrush when he got his own toothbrush. He just
What
reached
is
for
wrong with
mine,
you? Right.
like, and that definitely has not happened, but that's just me
Yeah,
like
I
thinking of
got
an
you. Yes.
example. But
Right.
yeah, I'm like mad at the smallest of things just
Yeah.
because he didn't put the toilet paper back on the roll after it
Right. The
ran
right
out,
way. Right. Right.
And so I just realized that like I had to in my marriage, I had to die to my selfish needs.
Yeah.
Because like you were saying, like opposites attract.
Yeah.
The picture I was getting in my head is like we're a puzzle piece. Like
Mm.
we're literally a
Yeah.
puzzle piece.
Yeah.
Like you
I
have
love
one
that.
side, I have one side,
Yep.
and we're coming together
I
to
love
make
that.
this like full picture.
Right.
And the thing is, it's a stretching. It's a
Yeah.
stretching of us both. Realizing that there's a lot of things that we are bringing to the table that we need to work through together.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what comes to mind when you said that.
I love that. And I
hmm
appreciate your transparency and vulnerability. How does it make you feel that when that happens? Let's challenge that.
How does it make me feel? So me and God be having these
Yeah, be
talks
having some
like,
talks in the car and by yourself.
yes,
You be like,
like
Lord, I gotta go here.
what, like I can't lie, like it. Sometimes I do feel entitled. Like I'm
Mm.
like, no, like
Mm.
this. If this is my thing, I
Yeah.
should be able to keep it.
Okay,
I
right.
worked this hard for this.
I'm just
And
old.
so I like, if I'm honest, emotionally, it is so hard. It can
Yeah.
be very, very draining.
Yeah.
But then when what my husband and I are doing right now is breaking a generational
That's
curse.
beautiful.
My mom has never gotten married.
Yeah.
My dad has children by multiple women.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, and we're raising our children.
Yeah.
What is the craziest thing about our lives is that we were both raised by someone else. We were not raised by our biological
Interesting.
parents. And now we are breaking the generational curse of literally just raising our children.
Right.
Like that's
Simple
a
as that.
big
It's
deal.
just a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that's where I'm at with that too.
That I appreciate your transparency and vulnerability.
Mhm.
Everybody who, if you're checking this out, we're talking about transparency and vulnerability. This is Serena Draper, last name, Hendershot, last name. Talk to me about that. So your name is not your maiden name is Draper.
Draper. Yep.
Your married last name is Hendershot,
hmm
and you wanted to keep them separate. I fully support you in that. Tell me why though.
Yeah. So
And you say people try to hyphenate it, and you're like, that's not what
no,
it is.
it's two different last names. So the biggest reason is I ended up getting my degree back in 2017. And I wanted to go off to law school, but then I had my daughter. And like I think I like mentioned it briefly, but my mom ended up passing away.
Yes.
And my mom she was the last Draper.
Okay.
And so her being the last Draper, and most women like take their husband's names.
Yeah.
Her being the last Draper, I knew that my children weren't going to take the Draper name either, and so I just wanted to keep it to be a staple, to give that back to my mom.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of debate on women taking their husband's last name or not and other things. I think to each his own. I think there was reason why people did it culturally, and there was a reason. But nonetheless, I love, because I am a mama's boy forever. And anything I could do, everything I do is really to honor my
For sure.
mom. I mean, it's to be the living legacy of who she was.
Oh yeah.
And to even if everybody didn't get to know her, they're gonna know her through me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful for it. And my mom was not perfect. I don't know if your mom was perfect.
No,
She wasn't.
not at all.
Talk to me about some things that, even though you came from an imperfect mom, that you still learned that still helped you.
There's so much. Like I think about my mom, and I don't know if we talked about this, but one thing is that we don't realize that our parents are also like learning themselves, right?
Yes.
And I literally realized that
Yes.
when like when I was in college actually, and as I'm like sitting through like my counseling sessions, I realized that my mom lost her parents by the time she was 21 years old.
Wow.
Like, she literally,
Right.
like, she literally was on
That's
her own
tough.
since then, and so I think about my mom's strength,
Mhm.
and just her resilience to, I mean, be raising 3 different children,
Mm.
that are very, very different age gaps.
Yeah.
I think what I also learned from my mom is the value of education and learning,
Mhm.
and always, like, putting your like wisdom forward and
Mhm.
making sure that you're learning from like your experiences,
Mhm.
and also just really like there's a balance of this right now, because there was a part of me, and I feel like I'm in the journey now. I'm
Mhm.
not saying I'm at the end, but there was a part of me where early on, like my independency was like, "Oh, I'm an independent woman, I don't need no man."
Right.
And I'm like, and it's something I talk
They
about
still
often,
uh-huh.
and I still like really struggle with that.
Yeah.
But when I think about the healthy side of what my mom even meant by independence, is that like, I am not validated because I'm married.
Right.
I'm not validated because I got this accolade in the community. I'm not validated by those things, but what I am validated by is my integrity. When I'm
Mm.
showing up and I'm honest
I
about
love
what I
that.
do, I'm validated by the character and
Mhm.
me more than I'm validated by the things that I'm doing. And so
Yeah.
that's something that I've really resonated with through the years, and thinking about the way she showed up in spaces a lot.
That is absolutely amazing, and I love you. You're making so many important sound bites. I would say these important statements that I think are going to resonate with so many people about what it means to be an independent woman. I think is a challenging thing. I think we're built to be interdependent, not codependent, not nothing without
Oh
someone.
yeah.
It's a part of this experience on earth. That's what it
Mhm.
was. It's like, well, yeah, and then it's like, well, one day we're all going to be one. So it's like I just want you to learn how to reconnect with
For
people,
sure.
and that's a part of this journey we're on here on Earth. And I think our women, especially Black women, have been raised to be so independent until they've often blocked themselves out of opportunities for sisterhood, for
Mhm.
marriage, for relationships, for so many things.
Yep.
Because it's like I don't need you. Well, yeah, you don't. That doesn't mean
Mhm.
you don't can't choose to have. It's a lot of stuff I don't need. Plenty of stuff we don't need, we
Oh
have,
yeah.
and you don't need it. But I believe God made us for community, common unity amongst people. And I think one of the places it starts is in relationship.
Oh
It's not
yeah.
in romantic relationship. That's not the only place it is.
Mhm.
It's also in sisterhood. It's also in bringing women together. And let's, as we kind of bring this to a close, let's go back to your women in community photo shoot today.
Yeah.
When you came up with the idea, what was your thought? Like, why? Women often say it can be challenging to bring women together.
Oh yeah.
There's challenges that come with that. Guys get together, we don't be thinking about nothing. Women, it can be challenging. But why do something like this? And what is your bigger hope from this?
So the biggest reason I did it is because I watched how women are in comparison with one
Mm,
another. It's that competition attitude. As soon as you walk in the room, you're sizing the other
that's
woman
real.
up. It is. It's
Like men,
so
we can't
real.
even understand. I mean, I suppose men do it at some level. They do it
Mhm.
from a finance level and there's some
Yeah,
things I
for
think.
sure.
But women literally, when they walk in the room, a lot of times it's like, what's she wearing? How's
Yeah.
she looking? How do
Mhm.
I compare to this?
Mhm.
Okay.
And I think about when I was doing it. So I
Hmm.
won't put this on other women, but when I was
Yeah.
doing it, it was because of the insecurity that was in myself.
Mm,
Like I was not secure in myself. So
yeah.
of course I'm going to size another woman
Yeah.
up. I'm not going to
Yeah.
be as confident. And so one of the biggest reasons in bringing women together, is so that there is a healthiness in this journey.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I feel like we have compartmentalized our lives.
Yeah.
Like we will be a good mom, we'll be a good sister, but then yet like we're not really good in our workplace,
Yeah.
or we're phenomenal in our workplace, but then we are terrible when we come home.
Mm,
And so really this idea behind Holistically Her is making sure that all aspects of our lives are aligned.
yeah.
And essentially, so it says holistically her, but the other side of it is a holistic heart. And so
Mm,
the A and the T that's added to her is aligned and transformed. So that when
mm.
you're aligned in your whole entire life, like it's because you have transformed and you've allowed the healing and the restoration
Yes.
that's taken place to transform you. And then the last side of it is that all the pictures that are going to be being taken, all of the things that are happening at this event is going to be promotionals, because I know the 29th birthday seems very weird. Like, why are you doing on a 29th
It ain't no
birthday?
big date. It ain't, no.
Like it's not like the
The
staple
30th or the
birthday, right?
birthday.
And so the idea behind this is that all the pictures, all the promotionals are going to lead to me publishing my book on my 30th birthday next year. So, yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So that's the hope. The book is, I don't have an official title, but the idea behind the book is an open letter to my daughter, and it's women healing in their womanhood.
Absolutely amazing. I'm
Yeah.
excited for it.
Mhm.
I'm excited for you.
Thank
Now we're
you.
all going to hold you to this book. You got to have it
I
done.
know.
Clock's ticking.
It is
It's
ticking.
time to get started. I'm working on a book right now as well. So I know what that's like. And I challenge myself every day. Like, I could be chilling. I could be working on this book, and I have a million other things I'm doing.
I need to turn off
You
Netflix.
got to turn it off.
That's
Oh, you
the
got to just
issue.
cut the pull up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you got to get rid of it. Because all those people who made them Netflix movies, they wrote them scripts. They took their time. They did their thing. So you got to do your thing. So, Serena, it is a pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. I look forward to getting to know you more. I love what you're doing for women. I love what you're doing for our community. I look forward to being a supporter of yours as you continue to go forward, continue to win awards, continue to make an impact, continue to do the things that are seen and unseen, right? That matter in our community. So keep it up, keep it going. If someone is watching this or listening to this podcast and they're like, man, I wish I could know more about her. I want to follow her journey. How can they find you?
Yeah. So on Facebook, I'm under Serena Louise. That's why Lucas didn't know my last name.
It's like, is your last name Louise Draper Hendershot or what? Is Louise your middle name?
Yeah.
Okay, you got lots of names. All right, all good, all good. Okay.
So
all
Serena
good.
Louise is my Facebook, and then for Instagram, two different handles. It's at _Serena Louise. Yeah.
I like that.
And then for the other one, Holistically Her, it's at holistically .her. And so Holistically actually has a WHOLESTICALLY.
Whole, like complete.
Yep, whole.
Right, got it.
Holistically Her, _her. So, yep, you guys can follow me there.
I love it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to follow Serena Louise or Serena Draper Hendershot and learn more about her, please do. Make sure you follow us at Lucas Live Media and follow me at Lucas Tyndale on all social media platforms. Remember, Lucas Live is about education, motivation, and liberation. It's about teaching you something you didn't know before, and it's about motivating you to do something with the information. Because we know information without motivation can lead to stagnation, or worse yet, constipation, and you're backed up and you can't do anything. And we want you to be able to move forward with the things that you're doing. We want you to be motivated to go forward and get that motor going. And we want you to be liberated, as in set free. We should be free to be our best selves. So many times, society, life, being a man, being a woman, being whatever it is, being a minority has caused us not to feel liberated, to feel free to be our best selves. And we don't go for the lives that we deserve because we feel held back by some unknown force. I believe that there's a known force out there that is pulling you and calling you to be greater. So I want you to be that. Thank you guys so much for being here, Serena. Thank you once more for being my guest.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody, have a great day.